Ladies and gentlemen, we will now have the panel discussion with Dr. Sanjay Rajaram of the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center, commonly called by its Spanish acronyms, CIMIT, to moderate the session, which will have as speakers Mr. Suresh Vishwanath Patil, Mr. Prahlad Rao Namdev Rao Karad, Mr. Ram Prakash and Mr. Jagjit Singh Hara, who will share their reminiscences of Dr. Norman Borlaug. May I request Dr. Ronnie Kaufman, Vice Chairman BGRI, to please introduce Dr. Sanjay Rajaram.
It's a pleasure for me to introduce Dr. Rajaram. I've known him for 43 years. He came to work with Dr. Borlaug in 1969, and I came to work with Dr. Borlaug as a student in 1970. I could tell you about his scholastic background and so forth, but I think the important thing for you to know about Dr. Rajaram is he is the plant breeder who had Dr. Borlaug's confidence. He's the man that Dr. Borlaug passed the mantle, passed the taj, as you would say here in India, to in 1973. And he delivered on the expectations that Dr. Borlaug had of him. Perhaps the acreage covered by his varieties may have even exceeded those covered by Dr. Borlaug's varieties. He's done a wonderful job over these many years, and it's a pleasure for me to introduce him to conduct this farmer panel. He's a man who has listened to the farmers for all of his life, and he's the most qualified person I can think of to take on this task. Dr. Rajaram.
Thank you, Rani, honorable ministers, my farmers friends here, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very interesting part of our session because we have 4 farmers selected from different parts of India who are going to give some narrative about their interactions, their excitement, who had some pleasure of working with Dr. Borlaug, or visiting with Dr. Borlaug. Before I pass on to them, well, let me first, before I go and say a few words on my behalf, I want to introduce our distinguished 4 farmers. These are Mr. Sri Suresh Patil from Maharashtra, Mr. Prahlad Rao Karad from Maharashtra, Sri Ram Prakash from Haryana, Mr. Jagjit Singh Hara from Punjab. I must make one little special mention that Mr. Hara always reminds me that his name should be pronounced Hara, not Hara. If you say Hara, that means defeated, and if you say Hara, that's green. And every time I have met him, and I had the pleasure of meeting many times, he always corrected me because I'm just, I got a little bit Americanized English, and I, instead of saying Hara, I used to call him Hara. Anyway, they're going to give some experience. Dr. Borlaug, we're revisiting the contribution of Dr. Borlaug and his tremendous legacy. Dr. Borlaug walked, I know that he did tremendous research, had a tremendous personality to reach out, talk to the ministers of agriculture, the president, the prime minister, influence the scientific community. But that's not what he did alone. He knew that unless whatever the technology he was producing, if it is not accepted by the farmers, then it is no good. It almost serves for nothing. Indeed, 65 years ago, when Dr. Borlaug basically, I would say, used the word rebelled with the Rockefeller Foundation administration in Mexico City to go to northwestern Sonora, 2,000 kilometers away. And that was 1944. The terrain were very difficult. Today we can fly in 1 or 2 hours. In those days, in pickup, you have to drive for 10 days before you arrive, because the terrain were not very good. Even in car, we can make that in 15, 16 hours today. When he started working there on his own, without tremendous support of Rockefeller Foundation at that time, he realized that the farmers were very much opposed to the agronomist. As a matter of fact, they didn't like agronomists. What had happened, there were very progressive area of Mexico, and whatever the technical people advised to farmers, that was not very good, the results were not very good, and that was the odd against Norman started his work. So he has to convince the farmers that if something very good, that must be taken in. It so happens that some of the farmers were growing very bad varieties, and Borlaug knew that they will shatter unless you harvest half green. And he told them that unless you harvest this variety soon, they would be on the ground. And that happened. And that was the beginning of the getting some of the confidence of the Yaqui Valley farmers for his work. Of course, he developed good varieties, and they were good. Dr. Borlaug walked in the fields all the way from the Yaqui Valley, talked to the farmers. He got inspired that he could talk to the current ministers of agriculture, like today, our honorable minister here, because he had always the inspiration and the problems told by the farmers. He not only implemented into the research arena, but he also some of the issues took to the policy people from in a very early time of his career. He worked in South American Pampa, Cerrado of Brazil, talked to the farmers, Delta in Egypt, and the vast area of our country, Indo-Gangetic Plains in Pakistan and India. You know that very well. He also talked to the farmers in African highlands, everywhere, because he knew that it's the farmers the one who produce wheat. We researchers produce small amount of wheat. Farmers the one produce the wheat, and they have to have the right technology. They have to have the right package of technology. And that's why it will move. He understood from the very beginning the role of fertilizer and water. And that was, he wasn't agronomist, but he understood that very clearly, that it's not only the varieties, but the fertilizers and the water were very important. And he also knew that you got to give that package to the farmers so that they can put it together. I don't want to go too much, would describe you a lot of incident, but that's why it began. He had tremendous, what I want to say, he inspired farmers. Farmers loved him everywhere because he gave them advice right there. And India is the one place where we going to, where he saw the plot. I'm sure he came to IRI, the PAU, and the university. He saw that beautiful plot, but he wasn't convinced. He has to go to the farmer's field and see that whether they were translated into actual application of technology to make those wheat look like good there on the farmer's field. Farmer's fields are not similar. We know that. They have a lot of difficulty. They lack sometimes fertilizer, water, timely application of inputs, weed control. And so he talked to these people, talked to the farmers. Today we have brought 4 representatives of farmers. You can see they are from India, but they represent the world. Their aspirations are the same as it was and they remain so. They were inspired by Dr. Borlaug, and I would be asking them to say a few words, but my understanding is that prior to that, we will run a video. Rani, how are we?
The video will run, sir, if you just ask for it to be on. The video will run when you finish.
Okay.
So before the panel discussion.
Yeah, okay.
So now after you're finished, you can have.
Yes. So I'd like to ask now that we run that 15 minutes video to show you some of the reflection of Dr. Borlaug's interaction with the farmers.